Hi everybody, Jessie here from jessiebanks.com and welcome back to another video. So today I've got an entire watercolor card process for you guys. I'm using MFT's birthday chicks, and I'm stamping that out on Arch's 140-pound cold press watercolor paper. I'm going to start off by making a line with my T-square down at the bottom, just to give me a plane for where I want to stamp all of my little birds from this stamp set. So we're going to stamp them out all in a line. This stamp set was released a while ago. I've loved it. I've used it a couple times. I think there's actually another video with this stamp set on my channel, but it's still available so you guys can pick it up. Of course, I'll have links to everything in the description box below. So once I get all of these little guys stamped out, I'm going to pull out some of my liquid frisket and I coat my brush in dish soap, and that actually stops it from getting destroyed. So I use the dish soap coated brush to put all of the liquid frisket on, and then when I'm done you can see the brush is basically fine. I still use a cheap brush, it's going to get destroyed eventually. The watercolor palette I am using is my custom watercolor palette that I built. I will put a link to that in the iCards here popping up for you guys. And I'm just going to start off by building the background. I did have to speed this up quite a bit. I had about an hour and a half of footage. Watercolor cards take a very long time for me, and that's part of why I don't do a ton of them on the channel, because they take forever, and then I got to edit them down so that I can make them in like a tolerable amount of time. Because I don't think any of you guys want to sit here and hang out with me for an hour to watch me paint a card. But I'm starting off by putting some nickel azo yellow and some quinacridone rose and some phthalo blue red shade, I do believe, down just to give myself a light wash of color in the background before I start building up clouds and depth and everything back there. It's just to kind of give me the gradient of the sunset as a starting point. So we get all of that put on, and I'm just going to let it dry and slowly keep layering it up. I tried a little bit of the lunar blue here, which I put in this palette, and I didn't like it. So I grabbed my Schmincke palette and I just used my indigo out of there instead of grabbing the tube out of my basket of colors from behind me. So I just used the Schmincke one with it. The watercolors play nice together. Most brands do. I haven't really found any that don't. So I just used that one, and then I'm just adding more layers of those colors here to work on the background and building that up. Some more yellow down at the bottom, fade it into the pink so we get some oranges, and then the pink into the blue and get some purples, and we have all sorts of fun pretty colors in our background. Now I am mixing up a gray, or no, pardon me, it's a brown color for the ground. I wanted them standing on something and I didn't want grass, so I decided to kind of go with a sandy texture. Now we're adding more blue in, and like I said, part of this is just patience. I let these layers dry in between, and I'm just taking my time and building up layers upon layers of color just to get lots of depth and texture in that sky in the background. And you can see my head in the way, yay. Now I'm just going in and freehanding kind of some bubbly cloud shapes with different colors, and we're fading those all up, and I'm adding more of the indigo at the top to start giving it a little bit darker up at the top, and slowly adding all of this in. It takes a long time, but I really enjoy the process, and I love just kind of sitting there and painting for hours. Rolling the camera's no big deal as long as you guys enjoy watching them. I really don't have an issue filming them, but they're going to be fairly sped up is the only issue I guess I could see people having a problem with. But I like filming them, so I'm going to put them up here for you guys as I get things done. I'm hoping to do more videos in the new year, so I kind of have a schedule and things kind of planned out. I'm hoping that'll help me sort of keep up and keep consistent with the different things I'm uploading. So I am using one of my silver black velvet brushes here for this. This is a synthetic and squirrel hair brush. It's a mixed brush. I love them. I use them quite a bit. I like the tiny little point they get to. They're kind of a mid-range expense brush. Nothing too crazy like my Kolinsky Sables, but they're not super cheap either, like a Taklon brush. I really like them. I'm accustomed to them. They're very soft and flowy. I have a really good time playing with them. Using the liquid frisket as opposed to trying to paint around all of these images makes my life so much easier. If you're going to attempt cards like this, I do suggest investing in a masking fluid. It'll just make everything work so much simpler because you can paint right over top of it, and then when you remove your liquid frisket, it's white. It's just like using a paper mask with your distress inks. It comes out nice and crisp and clear as long as you make sure you get it all the way to the edges. Yeah, it works just like that. So I think it's a really good investment if you're going to start doing cards with lots of backgrounds and just kind of layers and depth in behind them and things of that nature. I just find it makes my life a whole lot easier. So I'm just continuing to add some darker colors here and blending in on the background. I'm adding some, I do believe that is neutral gray, or no, it'll be graphite gray, just to make it a little bit darker up at the top, going in with some more of our quinacridone rose to darken it all up. Like I said, it's just tons and tons of layers. So I hope everybody is doing wonderful. I hope you had a fantastic holiday season. I'm so happy things have slowed down and I'm at home. I'm on holidays until the 6th of January. Life is great. I don't have to get out of my pajamas. I'm happy. I hope Santa was good to everybody and your kids, and you guys just had a ton of fun spending time with family. Here I'm removing all of that liquid frisket to show that white of the paper. And then we can start painting up our little friends down here, our little birds. So I'm using quinacridone gold for our yellow birds, and I'm going to start with shell pink for our pink birds. So I'm just putting it more concentrated where the darkest places will be, like where the shadows are underneath the belly and that. And then I'm blending it out into a lighter color. And I'm doing the exact same thing with the shell pink. I get lots of questions about the shell pink. It is a Shinhan PWC color, so that's their professional watercolor line. It comes from them. It's got a lot of white in it, but I really like the color. I use lots in skin tones and things of that nature. So I just find it really helpful to have on my palette, and I tend to reach for it a fair bit. So we're going to do some pink birds and some yellow birds and get them all painted up. I don't know what else to talk about. We got Caleb a snowboard, so he's been enjoying going to the hill. He would go every day if I would take him every day, but he absolutely loves it, so it was worth every penny. And then he just got a couple Nerf guns, so he's quite happy with how his Christmas went. He's happy to be on holidays until January, so that makes him pretty pumped that he's off for a little while now. We've been hanging out and playing board games and just kind of spending some time together and stuff, so that's always super fun. Went to see Kevin's mom, hung out in Regina, did some shopping. I got an espresso machine. Jesse's pumped because I've wanted one forever. So I was super excited about that. I'm going to make their little hats. This is Phthalo Turquoise, which is a color I have in my palette. I think it's absolutely beautiful. So their little hats are going to be that color, as well as the icing on our little cupcake in the middle. I'm going to make the balloon purple. Everything kind of looks like it blends in right now. But once we get a little further into this, I'm going to pull out some white gouache and I add some highlights to our clouds and a little bit of white around some of our images. It just helps them pop off the page a little more. And then at the end, of course, I go in with a black micron pen and I re-outline all of our images just to reinforce that black outline so that it's very bold and kind of in your face, and it doesn't really get faded with having the layers of paint put over top of them, especially when I'm using things like that shell pink, which is pretty opaque, as well as my white gouache, which is fairly opaque as well. So I just find that helps make everything pop and look nice and freshly stamped. So I'm just going through now and putting another layer of color onto all of our little birds, making their noses an orange color, adding a little bit more shading to our cupcake here to cover over where I put some blue on the actual cupcake. Oops, my bad. Same thing with our pink birds. I'm just jumping all over the page, making sure that areas are dry before I go back in. I don't want to paint wet paint next to wet paint because it'll bleed into itself and it just creates a mess and it's hard to fix, and sometimes you can't fix it. So I just prefer to kind of jump back and forth all over, letting everything dry in between. I'll also leave and come back. Like, I think I filmed this one over 2 or 3 days. You can see my sweater changing as we're doing different things here. So I like to come back and forth and let it dry and not race it. I don't want to push it too much. You can use a heat gun on your watercolors. I tend not to, simply because as long as the paper is damp, those watercolors are moving inside of the paper, and as soon as you force them dry, you're just kind of stopping that process. And I really like to let watercolors do their own thing and dry at their own pace so they can finish moving when they want, and I can only control them so far. I just find I really like the texture and the looks I get more when I do it that way, as opposed to when I blast it with a heat gun in order to dry them in a hurry. I decided that purple balloon was blending too much in, so I went back in with Carbazole Violet just to make it a little bit darker so it stands out. Here I'm pulling out my titanium white gouache from M. Graham. I really enjoy this gouache. It's my favorite white. I do have the Holbein one, I do believe. I haven't played with it yet, but we'll see what I think of that. As far as gouaches go, I've really enjoyed the M-Gram for a long time, so I've just kind of stuck to it. And I'm just doing a similar thing. I'm putting some on our little cloud shapes and I'm blending them up. And I'm just kind of giving it a little bit of a milky texture in the background. It's just kind of adding to the little feel of the sky being all over the place and kind of dancing in behind. You can see when it goes on, it looks really, really bright white and it's almost scary. But once it dries, it almost goes away. So it really fades back as it's drying just because of the amount of water I'm adding to it. It's not that the gouache isn't opaque. It's just that I'm putting a fair bit of water in with it so that it fades out and doesn't just look like a bunch of white spots all over the page. So we're going to finish that up. And then I'm just going to add a little bit. Oh, no, I'm not done yet. I thought I was finished. I'm not finished. Still playing with white. I added a fair bit of gouache to this. I knew that took me a while. I really enjoyed it though. I'm super pumped with how this card came out. I do take, this is my black micron, and I just re-outline it. And now I have a Posca white paint pen. I'm adding some white details, and then I'm going to add a stitched border all the way around our card. The sentiment I chose from the same stamp set says, "Yay, yay, happy birthday." This is a sickly, I'm not sure how to say it, gold gel pen. I bought it for my bullet journaling, but I decided to add some gold just dots on the page, and then they didn't stand out bright enough for me, so I pulled out my fine techs and went over top of them with gold fine tech, and then I decided I wanted 2 different colors of gold, so I went back over top of some of them with kind of like the whiter gold to the side there, that one, just to kind of make them stand out a little bit more. And that finished off the card. I added it to a top folding card base that measured 7 1/4 by 3 3/4. And that finishes the card. If you have any questions, definitely leave them down below. If you aren't subscribed to the channel, I'd love for you to subscribe and see what I make next. Again, all the links will be in the description box below, and I'll see you guys very soon for another one. Bye for now.